Hello, everybody. My name's Scott Anderson, and welcome to my movement lab here in Blue Mounds, Wisconsin. So I'm really excited today. This is our largest mindful cardio class ever. We're at 43 participants scattered here, there, and everywhere. So some of us are here live, and some people have signed up. They'll be watching the recording later on their own time. So I'm really glad we can all come together in this way. So to frame this endeavor, these mind-body practices that we'll jointly embark upon, the goal of the frame is about cultivating resilience. And not sort of a stoic or a resigned sort of resilience, but a joyful resilience. So with hearts open, we can go out in the world and do what we're called to do. If you haven't already, start to move nice and gently and slowly. Now, I've been on the bike for about 10 minutes, so I'm moving a little bit faster. Pretty warm already. If you're just getting going, mainly go through the movements. That'll get your muscles ready, get your joints ready, and can help reduce any tendency to have soreness later today or tomorrow. So as you keep moving, especially in times of stress and uncertainty, we tend to end up in our heads, and the anxiety can really take hold. So if you haven't already, drop your energy down into your belly. No need to do belly breathing. In fact, it's preferable not to do belly breathing. I'll talk more about that in a bit. Mainly just dropping your center of gravity down into your gut. We'll take a few moments quietly to feel your body as if your mind, rather than being in your head, was in your gut, in your belly. So to continue the discussion on breathing, the primary takeaway is when you do cardio, and really throughout the vast majority of your day, breathe naturally. No need to breathe deeply, to do any certain special breathing. Because we have this amazing body that's juggling all these different input streams to breathe in the most optimal way. So on Monday, I talked about some of the information streams that go to the brainstem in the muscles, mechanoreceptors, and metaboreceptors. Scattered throughout the vascular system, chemoreceptors to measure the chemical content of your blood. Pressure sensors in your thoracic cavity called baroreceptors. Sensors in your brainstem that measure the chemical content of cerebral spinal fluid. And then there's going to be the brain itself. Prefrontal cortices via association cortices, signaling the brainstem at the onset of exercise. So all these sensors are measuring chemical content, ionic concentrations, things that the thinking brain very unlikely has any conscious knowing of. So this is, in my opinion, a strong reason to breathe naturally. So your brainstem is keeping track of phenomena that the thinking brain can't even perceive. Drop back down into your belly. So in this embodied way, slightly speeding up. So you're probably a little bit warmer by now. Now start moving into your cardio zone 2. So as you approach zone 2, building on what I talked about Monday, on Wednesday I talked about mechanical or volumetric efficiency in breathing. That per unit time, whether it's a minute or 5 minutes, whatever it may be, you can exchange more fresh air when you breathe more shallowly and quickly than you can when you're doing deep breathing. And relatedly, doing deep breathing takes a lot of muscular effort, whereas doing the more natural breathing that tends to be quicker and shallower consumes less of your energy in executing the work of breathing. So you have more energy to do other stuff. In a sense, you'd be more resilient. You'd have more capacity. So today is a little bit like looking in the fridge to see what leftovers could make a meal. Because there's a handful of points I want to cover. So to begin, your nervous system, your subconscious, first and foremost, is going to protect the brain. This is called homeostasis. How is your body preserving itself, maintaining itself? So this big thing up here is incredibly energy hungry. At rest, your brain consumes about 25% of your energy. And I know these high protein, low carb diets are all the rage these days. Your brain can't do anything with fat. Brain can't do anything with protein. Your brain burns carbs. So maintaining this brain health, right amount of nutrients, coming at the right time, is going to be your nervous system's highest priority. Put another way, anything that tends to diverge from that finely tuned balance, that homeostasis, is going to put you more in fight or flight response. So in homeostasis, tend to be rest and digest, parasympathetic activation. Good. Out of balance, out of homeostasis, tends to activate the sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, freeze. Got back into your body, feeling whatever movements you're making, whether you're doing step-ups or calisthenics, or you have your road bike on a trainer like I do. Simply feeling whatever movement you're currently making. All right, so we have homeostasis, that's that half-eaten zucchini, we're going to have that for dinner. So next thing I want to talk about is oxygen. So for the tissues of your body, oxygen is toxic. It's also life-giving, but it has to be just the right balance. Too much oxygen is oxidation. How many of you consume antioxidants? Antioxidants is a recognition that too much oxygen is really bad for your body. In the same way that not enough oxygen is really bad for your body. I bet you can see where this one's going. Supercomputer knows exactly the right amount of oxygen. And it's going to vary your breathing, the depth, the rate, to maintain that perfect balance of oxygen content in your blood. Homeostasis. Too much oxygen takes you out of homeostasis, puts you more in that fight, flight, freeze response. So very often when people are doing deep breathing, there may be too much oxygen in their blood. And the supercomputer is trying to change the breathing to get you back to homeostasis. But the thinking brain is overriding. Not to say all deep breathing is bad. In moderation, it can be a great way to open up your body. Maintain the elasticity of your lungs and your rib cage. But if you train yourself to deep breathe throughout the day, you're probably messing with homeostasis. So when in doubt with your breathing, relax your out breath. Because when people are tense, they tend to stop exhaling. So just check in with your out breath. Let it flow. Let it run its course. And then you can witness the brainstem, the supercomputer, doing its thing. So that's been quite a lot of talking. Let's take a moment here to check in with your pulse. I'm at about 91 heartbeats per minute. So I'm just barely getting to my zone 1, but I'm on the clock. And I want to be able to talk intelligibly. So perhaps you have a chest harness that's giving you real-time heart rate data, and then you can adjust, either more intense, less intense, to get into your zone 2. So zone 2 is that perfect dose, a little bit of adrenal activation, that when we meditate in about half an hour or so, your body then will overcorrect and go more into relaxation. So getting into zone 2 is that just right amount of adrenal response to keep the system from getting locked into adrenal overload. So that was a few olives, a little hot sauce, more ingredients in today's potpourri. So whether you found to go a little bit harder or back off a little bit to get in, stay in your zone 2, I want to talk a little bit now about lung physiology. Why don't I start with a punchline? In calculating VO2 max, or your cardiac capacity, lungs are not one of the factors. Now, when you're going hard, you may experience that you're breathing hard, you may feel that your lungs hurt. But it's rarely, if ever, the lungs that are limiting factor. It's more likely it's in your vascular system or in the muscles themselves. And that's where you room for improvement. Then yes, you'll end up breathing harder because oxygen isn't metabolized at the muscles and the mitochondria, or there are not enough capillaries. And the blood is having to move too fast in the capillaries you have. And there's not enough time for the oxygen to absorb and the waste byproducts to absorb. So then you end up out of homeostasis, go more into the adrenal response, and you may even end up panting. But it's not that your lungs are the limiting factor. Okay, there's some exceptions to this. But before I talk about those exceptions, I'd like to speak a bit about the extent to which the lungs are overbuilt. That's a term I learned from Professor Dempsey. I mentioned some of his work on Monday and Wednesday. So what we find is that your lungs are more than twice as large as most any of us need. So we'll find marathoners, triathletes, that whether from injury or disease, maybe have one lung removed. they do remarkably well with one lung because the lungs are that much bigger than most of us ever need. This says a few things. It means that all of us have a lot of untapped potential to develop more cardio capacity because the size of your lungs is limited by your rib cage. But more mitochondria in your muscles, more density of capillary beds, it's pretty limitless. So you can be a lot fitter. I can be a lot fitter. Not a lot of ceilings on that for us. Okay, lungs, what are the exceptions? Well, asthma. And those of you who have asthma, I'm sure know how to work with it. We also have a handful of inflammatory diseases in the lungs. And some of you, I think, are working with those. Whether it's your inhalers or whatever it may be, you know how to work with that. And then sometimes when we start to do cardio, it'll be a little bit of a panic response and we start panting. Not as a function of the lungs or vasculature or mitochondrial density, but it's triggering a panic response. So when that occurs, slow down a bit. Don't try and force your breathing. Relax your out breath. Take a few quiet moments here, drop back into your body. All right, one last thing here as we make our potpourri lunch, various random subjects brought together. There's a good question came in about vagus nerve and deep breathing. So vagus is going to be your rest and digest. Generally, more vagal tone, the better. Now, I know there are a lot of really great books and authors talking about deep breathing and vagal tone. But now I'm going to put my scientist hat on. We don't really say in science that a single study proves anything. But if many studies replicate, then we'll talk about the evidence is converging on a result. The evidence is converging that when you do deep breathing, breathing and vagal tone decouple. What's that mean? When you're not consciously controlling your breathing, and your breathing is naturally slower and deeper, you have more vagal tone. And that tends to track very linearly. So it stands to reason that if you breathe slowly and deeply, you'll have more vagal tone. But that's not held up. Once you start trying to breathe deeply, vagal tone does its own thing, oftentimes decreasing. So I think it's premature to plant a flag and say deep breathing doesn't impact vagal tone. But I would say it's premature to suggest that people do deep breathing to create those great benefits of increasing your vagal tone. And actually, this was a key part of my master's thesis, citing the groundbreaking work of Grossman and Taylor. So we have a few minutes remaining in cardio. Take a moment to check in your heart rate. Mine's gone up a little bit. Maybe my excitement about talking about vagal tone. And check in with your heart rate. If you're not sure what I mean by this zone 2, please consult the handout that came with your class invitation. You'll find all the reasons for zone 2. And you'll also find a zone 2 calculator that you can use to find your heart rate zone. There's a lot more I could talk about with breathing, but those are the main points. We'll probably return to the subject again in the future. Now, whether it's today in a chat or on our Facebook group for the Mindful Cardio community, I'm currently taking requests for the next discussion. So what aspects of the brain, the body, exercise physiology would you like to explore? So to encapsulate this whole week, when you're doing cardio, don't control your breathing a whole lot. And if you do anything with or to your breathing, check to make sure that your exhales aren't being cut short by tension or stress. And every so often, a handful of really deep exhales can be really useful to help restart the optimal natural breath. So now slow down a little bit. I'm going to transition to the mat pretty soon. And after we do a little work on the mat, what I call movement lab, our meditation today will be mantra meditation. So considering a word that you find inspiring, a phrase that you may find uplifting, or maybe a poem or a prayer that fills your heart. So no need for a fancy mantra in a foreign language. Taking a few moments here to connect to your heart, to arrive at your mantra. All right, so with that mantra in mind, putting it aside for the time being, and then transitioning to your mat. start off on the floor. Once you're on the floor, knees bent, feet flat upon the floor. And if you're wearing a chest harness, this is a really good time to take that chest harness off, and then it won't jab you in the ribs. So continuing what we're exploring in the cardio, let your breathing be. If it's fast, appreciating the appropriateness of fast breathing. If it's slow, appreciating the appropriateness of slow breathing. A chance to witness the brainstem juggling all these different information streams. And determining the rate and the depth of your breath, appropriate for conditions. So letting your breathing continue to be just as it is, as you bring your left leg in. Now, when you bring your left leg in closely, maybe you're already feeling how your hip flexor muscles are soft and relaxed. And see if you can keep those hip flexors soft and relaxed as you slowly lower your leg down to tap your big toe, and then slowly bring your leg back in. And we'll go up and down a few more times like that. So for the time being, we're letting the breathing be its own rhythm, and the movement another rhythm. And in the movement, the key point is hip flexors, as best you can, soft and relaxed. Let's do one more down, up, down. So once you feel your left foot on the floor, now bring your right leg in. So pretty far in. Connecting with your hip flexors, and you can probably see them actually touching those muscles. That's a reminder to relax them. Then slowly lowering that leg down, tap your toes, and come on back up. So we're continuing letting the breathing be, whatever it is, fast, slow, deep or shallow. And in addition, this movement, which is being done at a different rate, a different pace. A couple more here, letting those hip flexor muscles relax. And that's going to make this more of a core exercise, especially in the next iteration. So next time that leg is in, let's keep it there. Then bring your other leg in. And so now it's both left and right. Hip flexors soft, relaxed. And then keep those hip flexors best you can offline as you lower down and come up. As you lower down and come up. So especially if you keep your lower back contacting the floor, maybe you're feeling how your belly is working. The more that you release your hip flexors, the more that you're going to strengthen your core. Let's do another down, up, down. Then rolling to your side and coming up to your hands and knees. So probably your breathing is a little different now than it was 5 minutes ago. Continue letting it be. And as you let your breathing be, take your lower back and arch your lower back up toward the ceiling. Then your upper back and then your neck, such that your tailbone and the crown of your head draw toward each other. This right here is called spine flexion. From spine flexion, return to a neutral spine. Now, right between your shoulder blades, generate spinal extension. Now let thoracic extension expand to include lumbar extension and cervical extension, so you end up looking forward. Pausing here. And then back to a neutral spine. Turn your toes under. And lift your knees and hips and move back to dog pose. So now in dog pose, we're going to fundamentally shift the approach to breathing. So right here, lengthen your out breath. Now deepen your in breath. Longer exhale. Deeper inhale. One more like that. And maintaining that breathing as you come down to your knees. So now we're making a shift. Now we're going to use the breathing to fill the lungs and open up the rib cage. So inhale, spine flexion, cat. Exhale, spine extension, cow. Deep inhale, cat. Lengthened exhale, cow. Few more. One more cycle, cat cow. Back to a neutral spine. And then back to downward dog. So continuing that deeper breathing. And then with the next exhale, step your feet up to your hands, gorilla pose. With the inhale, folding, filling your lungs. And with the exhale, rising up, emptying your lungs. Inhale, arms down. So continuing that deeper breathing. So it has a lot of benefit to keep your lungs pliable, and especially to keep your rib cage open. A lot of people, when they get older, their rib cage gets really tight, and that can constrict the breathing. And cardio isn't necessarily going to open up your rib cage, but spending a little bit of time doing what we're doing here, deeper inhale, lengthened exhale, can help you maintain your lung capacity. So the next arm movements are about keeping that freedom in your rib cage. So start with the inhale, divert that inhale into your back. Then as you empty your lungs, take your arms up. Inhale, arms down. Exhale, arms up to help increase lung capacity. Inhale, arms down to help increase lung capacity. Two more. The next time your arms are up, pausing. Then to help open up your side ribs, exhale, side bend to the right. We're going to hold here for a few breaths. Exhale, back up to the vertical. Side bend now to the left. Couple breaths here. Exhale up. Inhale, arms down. We'll pause here for a moment. Now, building on something that we worked on in the past week in the movement lab classes was about keeping your chest open as you revolve your arms internally in the interest of improving your posture. So to continue that thread, lightly draw your shoulder blades onto your back. Then bring your arms behind you, one hand catching the other hand. Then stepping your feet medium width apart. And we're going to start with the second side first. Turn your right foot in and your left foot out. Turn your right foot a little bit more in. And then you can see how I have one hand catching the other hand. So keeping your shoulder blades snug up against your back as you do so. Then with the next exhale, lift your collarbones and your chin. And then with the inhale, fold from your hips, coming about halfway down. And looking straight down at the floor. That deeper breathing. Now, if you'd like a little bit more challenge, you could hover your hands up off your back. A few more breaths. Deeper inhale. Longer exhale to come up. Turning back to the front. So one hand is catching the other hand. Switching hands. Now take your left foot in and your right foot out. Left foot turns a little bit more in, so you can probably see I'm facing to the side. So big, deep inhale to help open up your rib cage. Then exhale, lift your collarbones and your chin. Then with the inhale, folding from your hips. Coming about halfway down, culminating with looking down at the floor. That deeper breathing. Now, if you'd like a little bit more challenge, you could hover your arms up. The point here is not to take them way up high. The point here is to help strengthen the muscles that support improved posture. Deep inhale, filling every last corner of your rib cage. Lengthened out breath to come up. Turning back to the front. And then stepping your feet together. Feel those deeper breaths. Stepping your feet wide apart. Turn your left foot in and your right foot out. We'll make a couple movements. Exhale, bend your ankle, hip, and knee. Inhale, straight. Exhale. Inhale. So next time, knee in the bent position, pausing there. Stay there for the inhale. Use the inhale to expand your ribs. Then exhale, tip your hips, elbow to knee, hand on the hip. So we have a choice here in the side angle. We could do a version that's very strong for opening the side body, or one that's more about releasing arm, shoulder, upper chest into neck. Okay, let's do the upper chest, shoulder, neck version. Taking your left arm up, straight up, and then toward the floor, turn your head and neck. And then with the next in-breath coming up, and turning back toward the front. Second side, turn your right foot in, left foot out. Matching movement to breath, exhale, bending. Inhale, straighten. In moderation, a little deep breathing. It's really good. And it will long-term be good for your breathing. Do you keep your rib cage open? Because while the lungs are overbuilt, many people, especially as they get older, their rib cage starts to collapse. It becomes really hard to get a full breath. So not to villainize deep breathing. It just isn't very compatible with doing cardio. So next time, knee in the bent position, pausing there. Holding there for the inhale. Exhale, tip your hips. So the version of side angle that can help release jaw tension, neck tension, upper chest tension, shoulders, even into the elbows and wrists. Take your upper arm straight up, and then toward the floor, turn your head and neck. And with the next in-breath coming up, turning back to the front, and stepping your feet together. 3 deep breaths. Now with this exhale, let go of the deep breathing. So what we just did is we shifted the control from the frontal lobes back to the brainstem. Now, frontal lobes can witness the breathing, but anytime that they're controlling the breathing, it's more than likely introducing more stress in your life. Now let's move toward meditation practice. You could sit in a chair, recliner, on the floor, on a cushion. A lot of people have shared with me they've felt a lot of stress this past week. And so, time-tested technique to work with the mind in stressful times is mantra meditation. So once you've found your posture, quietly to yourself, reciting your mantra. Some of you may be using a mala. And the mala can be an additional support to help stabilize the mind, to help calm your mind. One of the interesting phenomena of mantra meditation is how frequently we'll find that we're connected to the mantra, yet we're thinking about other stuff. So this is part of the power of mantra meditation. Staying with your mantra, and then whatever thoughts or feelings or emotions may be arising, let them coexist. With the mantra, you're maintaining the thread of the meditation. And that other stuff is still there, isn't it? The image that's sometimes used is the mind is inherently open and vast, like the sky. On a cloudy day, the sky is still blue. We just can't see the sky because there are clouds in the way. And the metaphor extends that thoughts, plans, ideas, they're just like clouds. They're simply obscurations. Continuing with your mantra. And that awareness of your mantra, vast, spacious, and any of the extraneous thoughts, feelings, worries are like passing clouds, free to come into view, free to be there, and equally free to move along, to move through. We're practicing mantra meditation. We'll take the next 1 minute quietly. letting your mantra fall away. We'll take a few moments here to not meditate. Alrighty. Thank you so much for joining us today. Biggest group ever for mindful cardio. So excited about that. So if you have any comments, questions, requests for future topics, please feel free to type them in. In the meantime, some events that I'm really excited about. Later this morning, we're doing an open house at Pilates on Harrison. We've grown so much in the past few months that we wanted to have an opportunity to share what it is that we all do. It'd be an opportunity for teachers to describe their programs and also for you to ask any questions about our programs. That's at 10:15 Central Daylight Time. For those of you who are watching this, you are part of the Mindful Cardio community, and I'm doing a special event on Tuesday about setting goals and using goals not as a way to be stoic or competitive, but as a way to help keep you on track, especially now that the days are getting shorter and a little bit cooler. It can be hard to stay on track, can it? So goals can be really useful. Those are the main things I wanted to cover, and anything showing up in the chat? Alrighty, so not at the moment. So if it comes through, I'll address it in a following class. We have a really long leg with YouTube. So glad that we could be here, and let's do this again really soon.